Well, it was another day of nothing happening in Donald Trump's failed attempts to negotiate with Iran the day after he ignored his own self-imposed deadline on those negotiations. Of course, no one violates Trump deadlines more than Donald Trump, and so he simply made his deadline disappear yesterday in a public statement claiming that Iran negotiators were just begging him to extend the deadline so that they could come up with a reasonable proposal for Donald Trump to consider, to which the Iranian government said the Islamic Republic of Iran has welcomed dialogue and agreement and continues to do so. Breach of commitments, blockade, and threats are main obstacles to genuine negotiations. World sees your endless hypocritical rhetoric and contradiction between claims and actions. And so, as of day 53 of Donald Trump's war, all of the explosions and death that Donald Trump has caused in Iran, including the Tomahawk missile strike on a girls' school that killed hundreds of people, in all of that, Donald Trump has accomplished nothing for the American people in his war and nothing for the world. But he has delivered higher fuel prices and therefore higher prices on everything else that moves on trucks in this country. And instead of trying to come up with ways to help Americans survive, what he insists is only a temporary increase in the price of gas and other prices. Donald Trump spent the day on social media complaining about the United States Supreme Court siding with the Constitution against him when it decided that Donald Trump illegally and unconstitutionally imposed tariffs, which is a power that the Constitution very clearly grants to Congress. And in his attack on the Supreme Court, Donald Trump threw his usual racist reference at Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, but it was nothing compared to the racism on display once again today in Robert Kennedy Jr.'s testimony to Congress, this time to Senator Angela Also Brooks, whose exchange with Robert Kennedy Jr. we will show you later in this hour when Senator Also Brooks joins us. In Donald Trump's attack on the Supreme Court, he said, handing over $159 billion in tariff refunds to people who have been ripping off our country for years is unexplainable. Of course, it is impossible to explain to Donald Trump what's wrong with illegally taking money from people. It's impossible to explain to Donald Trump what's wrong with illegally overcharging people. It's impossible to explain to Donald Trump why anyone or any business would ever refund money to anyone they illegally took money from. But when the government of the United States or a company or anyone you're dealing with illegally takes your money, the elementary and most basic legal requirement is that that money be paid back to you. And every penny of the $160 billion plus interest in Donald Trump's illegal tariff money that has to be refunded will be refunded only to Americans who have paid tariffs on goods that we have purchased from other countries and American companies that paid those American tariffs right here in America when the goods arrived, imported into this country. Donald Trump calls every one of those American businesses the enemy. Donald Trump has implicitly threatened businesses that apply for those refunds. And the biggest refunds of billions and billions of dollars are owed to companies like Walmart and Apple and Amazon. And yesterday, Donald Trump said that he would be very happy if they did not apply for refunds. His words were that he would remember. He'd remember if those big companies do not ask for their refunds. That can be taken by executives at those companies as a presidential threat that Donald Trump will do something to harm them. He will find a way to harm them and their companies if they apply for those refunds. If Apple doesn't apply for the billions of dollars of refunds that they are owed, as Stephanie Ruhle correctly and quickly pointed out last night, shareholders of that company will sue the company for not applying for those refunds and getting the shareholders' money back. Because not applying for those refunds is a violation of the legal fiduciary duty that the executives of those companies have in protecting the assets of their shareholders. And of course, Donald Trump doesn't know that. A few days ago, Donald Trump actually thought incorrectly that his vice president was in the air, flying halfway around the world to Pakistan to negotiate with the Iranians. Donald Trump thought his son-in-law was also on his way to Pakistan to join the negotiations. They still haven't left the United States. At least today, Donald Trump seems to know where they are. At least today, the President of the United States apparently knows that his vice president is not in Pakistan negotiating with Iranians. At 1:34 p.m. today, while accomplishing nothing in the non-negotiations with Iran, Donald Trump announced the results of his investigation into last night's election in Virginia, making it clear to the world and to the Iranian leadership what's really on his mind, what he's really concentrating on. Quote, "A rigged election took place last night in the great Commonwealth of Virginia!" Exclamation point. Who needs an investigation when Detective Trump is on the case? He just has to know who won the election. Then he knows if it was rigged. Donald Trump said, all day long, Republicans were winning. There is no such thing as winning an election all day long, and there never has been. No votes are counted during the day on election day. There is no way of knowing who is winning on election day. No one's keeping score until the polls close. And in an indicator that the social media post was written by someone other than Donald Trump, it uses a word that Donald Trump is unlikely to know. When it says the language on the referendum was purposely unintelligible and deceptive. Unintelligible just doesn't sound like a Trump word. But what is believable about his next statement is that Donald Trump wouldn't be able to figure out what the ballot meant if he actually tried to read it, which he surely didn't. Donald Trump said, "I am an extraordinarily brilliant person, and even I had no idea what the hell they were talking about in the referendum." Virginia voters, as we reported to you last night, voted for a redistricting plan endorsed by Governor Abigail Spanberger, who joined us here last night, that will likely add 4 more Democrats to the House of Representatives from the state of Virginia. Virginia Democrats put this plan up for a vote by every voter in the state, unlike the Texas redistricting plan that began as a conspiratorial suggestion from Donald Trump to Texas Republicans to try to add more Republicans to the House of Representatives from the state of Texas. Texas voters did not get a chance to vote on that redistricting plan, which was the plan that provoked California Democrats and now Virginia Democrats to ask the voters in those states to approve redistricting plans that will very likely deliver more Democrats to the House of Representatives and fight against Donald Trump's attempt to change the tilt in favor of Republicans in the House of Representatives. Very likely, this redistricting will now create a majority of Democrats in the House who will then have the full power to investigate Trump world corruption that was on display in a Senate hearing today.
President Trump and his family have done a very brisk business with the UAE over the last few years. There was the $500 million that Sheikh Tahnoon, the UAE's national security advisor and brother of the president, invested in World Liberty Financial, which is the Trump family crypto venture, right before the president's inauguration. There was the $2 billion in World Liberty stablecoin that Sheikh Tahnoon used to invest in Binance, a deal that effectively handed World Liberty $2 billion in cash at the same time that the United States government relaxed our export controls on high-end AI and chips to UAE companies. And now, I understand that the UAE is looking for a swap line. The war in Iran has already cost us dearly. In my view, it's been a huge mistake, made us less safe and a lot worse off. In addition to lives lost, we're talking about over $1 billion a day in taxpayer money. We're talking about higher gas prices, higher prices overall. And now we understand that the UAE is asking you to provide them a swap line through the Exchange Stabilization Fund.
And last night, former Secretary of State John Kerry, who successfully negotiated an agreement with Iran in which Iran pledged to never develop nuclear weapons, said this.
I've never been asked, but my advice to the administration is, take time to set up your agenda. Take time to be reasonable in ways that will not encourage them to say, oh, you just took a ship over. And we, on the other hand, said we're going to open the Straits of Hormuz, which, by the way, have never been shut in any conflict that we've had or difference we've had with Iran. So today, Donald Trump, by ripping up the agreement and pulling out, has actually put us in a worse place than we were previously.